Just letting you know I'm currently watching Sky Racing on the Sportsbet app live from Square Leg. No, they won't catch him. He's home. Oh, sorry. Watch Aussie Racing anywhere with Sportsbet. Conditions apply and gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
Continental Tires, AFL Trade Radio. A trade news update for the Beaumont Tiles Trade Club.
Welcome back. Thanks for your company. Nick Del Santo and Brendan Goddard with you until midday. There is quite a few calls and text messages that we will get to, BJ. But for this news update, I want to play the audio of Jeff Kennett from this morning speaking on SEN.
The sorts of players that have been mentioned in the media have all said publicly also they want to stay at Hawthorn, and they've made that decision or made those comments because they've seen both the experience we've got and also the potential of some of our younger players. But that's not to say that there won't be a change or two before the trade and draft period is over. As I understand it, we've offered no one up. I hope they all remain at the club, and I expect them to, but I'm not sure.
BJ, this is a club for the last 15 odd years that have been rock solid. Not much gets out of that football club. They have been ultra successful. But the last 2 months, and this is going back to Clarko and the way that that finished, has been messy. So even this has mess all over it. There is a disconnect between what we're hearing from Jeff Kennett, from what he put out to the members yesterday, what he has said this morning. He's almost covered every base. We want them, but you might be shocked by what we're doing. But please understand that it's under. Himself. We've done a lot of due diligence, and it'll be a smart decision. There's bits and pieces moving everywhere here. This club has been almost the pinnacle of a collective message and a simple message to members, and the way that they have performed on the football field. The last 2 months has not been that at all. The amount of different stories that came out during the Clarkson finishing up, Sam Mitchell coming in, and now this has been dragging on for far too long, in my opinion. I would have thought that if Jeff Kennett is to put out an email as he did yesterday, that was in conjunction and an understanding with the football club. This sounds like, and I don't know this to be a fact, and his knowledge of the football club, this sounds like this is Jeff speaking and that it isn't always what the football club is speaking about. How do you see it?
I think that's been proven just on your last point, that maybe Jeff just doesn't run it by the footy club and they don't actually know what...
Should he?
Yeah.
Should the president...
Definitely, I think.
They should be aligned.
So they should be aligned. I think that's been proven with, I think, more so the relationship back in the day between Clarko and Jeff, just about the mismeshing that was coming out. And
well, I think...
Which he's a great story, isn't he? He's like a walking headline. And I think he knows that too. So, but what, back earlier to your point is, it was contradictive of what he was kind of saying. And then we heard the comments about don't be surprised about what happens So I was like, all the players want to stay. We haven't offered up anyone. And then it's like, don't be surprised if something happens. So,
well, from all reports, none of those players that we've mentioned about over the last week or two, or even prior, some of them have gone back longer than that, have put their hand up to say, please, I would like to be traded. Tim O'Brien has gone.
Yep.
That's a different story. But the players that we're speaking so the guys that we're speaking about are those guys in the bracket of 28, 29 that have some value still as it currently stands that could go to another football club. My understanding is none of them have said, please, can I be traded?
Not yet.
Oh.
Not
Robbie
yet.
D'Orazio sort of stuff. Not yet. So does that mean that it will?
Well, it's just, I'm not sure. Is it like, you'd love to know, as we know as players, there's always more that happens.
Of course
behind
there
the
is.
scenes and on the surface. And
some of those things play out, and some of those players stay at that football club and go on to have fantastic careers.
But there's always conversations being had. It's the same one. How many names actually get brought up, or the questions are being asked by club to club in this trade period? I'd say there'd be close to 100 just names. Oh, what about him? What about him? Anyway, but there's a lot more happening behind the surface. So, it just you'd love to be a fly on the wall in the conversations around Hawthorn and what they actually are and their purpose behind this.
Yeah.
So my point is, maybe the players, and from my experience, I know footy clubs do this. They back you into a corner and force you to make a decision. then there's no blood on their hands.
That sounds like it's a little bit personal, BJ. The Kogan Mobile open line.
I made that clear. It's happened. I know this happens.
I know that you know that it happens.
So is this one of those cases that it gets to a point now? It's late in the piece. There may have been conversations. The players may have said, "Mate, I'm what's going on and the way I feel unwanted, all those kind of things. I'm going to put my hand up and there may be conversations already had with those players, the players' managers, and now the managers are out in the marketplace saying, actually, I'm just throwing a name up here, so don't take this the wrong way. Listen, he's like Jack Gunson. He's like, mate, all right, I've had enough. Like, my name's been floated around. I can see the writing on the wall, backing me into a corner. This is how I feel. I'm going to put my hand up and say, I want out. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Hawthorn go, yeah, okay, we didn't want you to go, but if that's the case, we're happy to explore that option.
I want to explore this more with you, and you can use your personal experiences while telling me about that story. The Kogan Mobile open line is 1300 23 55 48, and that is the number that Andrew has called from Geelong. You want to speak about Rory Lobb, Andrew?
Yeah, guys, how are you?
Very good.
So Geelong are after probably, even though we've signed Stanley, we know Stanley's hit and miss. Why don't we go over to Fremantle and say, all right, you give us Rory Lobb, we'll pay 450 of his contract, and the Cats get pick 27 as well, then send Clark off and pick 53 Fremantle.
Do you want my initial reaction to that?
That's what he's after.
You speak about Reece Stanley being hit and miss. I think you're going to get a similar result from Rory Lobb. That's not rude. I think that's an assessment of two players that have been playing the game that we've seen evidence of what sort of player that they are. I understand the other pieces of those trades and Clark possibly being a part of it and all those things that could fall into place. But in regards to Geelong, and this is almost speaking on behalf of Geelong supporters, and I know a handful of them, and we've clearly seen the footage over the last few years about their ruckman or them trying to find that piece of that puzzle, that being that number one ruckman. But I think if you're trying to move on Reece Stanley, for example, even though he has just signed a 2-year contract, I think earlier this week, I think you're going to get a similar output from Rory Lobb. Now, this isn't necessarily a knock on them. It's just the style of player that they are. They are a different style of ruckman to a Max Gawn. They're different to Nadanui. They're different to Brodie Grundy. They're different to Todd Goldstein. They just go about their game differently. So I think if you're trying to replace Reece Stanley, you'd probably want one of those other styled ruckmans. And if you're going for Rory Lobb, you're probably going to get more of the same.
Yeah, and they're running out of options, aren't they? So they've probably, with respect to Reece being a past teammate, he has been really inconsistent. So arguably Geelong's midfielders haven't really capitalised on, their strengths around a stoppage, Dangerfield strength, because you could only imagine if they had a ruckman of Max Gawn's ability, or looking back in the day, Aaron Sandilands, we know, Dal, I think good ruckman that able to hit the ball to a general vicinity more often than not. So 60, 70% of the time get their hands on the ball first. It gives their on-balls a lot better chance and a lot more confidence in knowing where it's going.
But on the flip side, Beach, all of those ruckmen, Radicalese had opportunities, Darcy Fort, clearly not as much, but he's been at the football club for a period of time. They have all Blixarves who probably should be their number one ruck, but they need him in defence. All of those different scenarios that they've been going through. There's no greater opportunity for any of them just to take their damn opportunity.
Yeah, grab it with both hands.
And knowing Joel Selwood a little bit, hearing some of the conversations he's had with other players, grab him by the scruff of the neck and say, this is what we demand of you. We love Reece is an athlete. Reece Stanley is an athlete, BJ. Can drift forward, can drift back, can take grabs. And he's had some brilliant games. But he's also had some poor games. So that ability to minimise the gap between his best and his worst, but there is still opportunity there for someone that just wants to take it. And I look at that leadership group and I look at the leaders and the culture of that football club. They can simplify that role of the ruck. You don't have to do all the pretty stuff. But when it's there,
do you reckon they've done that though?
I would like to think so.
Yeah,
I would like to think so. But what I'm saying is that door hasn't closed for those guys that still remain there, whether they bring in someone else. But that door is still open for that ruckman that says, hey, there's some things that I can't do, but I am prepared to compete. And we spoke about competing. Just compete. Just give us your honest effort at the contest and create a little bit of space for those elite midfielders to do what they do best. We appreciate the call, Andrew. Let's go straight to Michael in Sydney. You want to speak about my man, Jared Brander?
How are you, mate? All right?
Yeah, we're good. How you doing?
Yeah, look, you're not bad. I've got a couple of questions. I spoke to you guys yesterday in regards to Rory Lobb yesterday, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Jared Brander for a start. Look, I'm gobsmacked that Freo are not looking at him. It's an easy cross switch across town. Yeah, okay, normally doesn't happen between the two clubs, but you know what? The way I see it is we need a key position player, and he can go forward. Okay, that's one. He's a good mark.
Yep.
high draft pick. Now, with Rory Lobb, Peter Bell came out yesterday, and I got an email from a member saying that we are not going to release Rory Lobb unless we're able to obtain another high, like a forward / a ruckman. Now, why do we look at Tim English?
Thanks for the call, Michael. We appreciate that. So there's a few pieces in that. So my understanding is Tim English is going nowhere. The suggestion of Tim English moving was off the back of his partner being from WA or going back to WA or something behind the scenes
so
there.
She's played netball in Queensland, just signed with the Perth
Correct.
team.
So I think that's where that started from. Has a little bit of the Adam Treloar story from last year, doesn't it, before he ended up at the Western Bulldogs. So I think that is the only catalyst of the Tim English story. He's wanted at the Dogs. He can improve at the Dogs, and the Dogs need him for where they could be in 12 months' time.
Exactly. Where are the Bulldogs at with their footy? They're in the window.
Yeah. So, and then the other bit with the Rory Lobb is, so I heard those comments from Peter Bell as well last night. So we understand his stance on it. There's also a piece within that, Michael, that of course you are going to say that you want that guy, you don't want him to go, posturing a little bit, because then it gives you a greater hand. Because if he openly says, hey, Rory Lobb's got 2 years left on this contract, but we're happy to move him on, you lose a little bit of your bargaining power.
You lose a lot.
Well, you lose a lot, but you still got 2 years on his contract. So they still can sit there and say, BJ, at the end of the day, no, he's not going. But if he is to go, what piece do you bring in? Jared Brander, who we get to, who has been at the West Coast Eagles since the end of 2016, I believe that it is. I like him, BJ. I think he's a really good player. I think he needs to play a lot more senior football. Could he move next door? And would he fit into the Dockers back line, half forward line?
You know him better than I do. We've only seen clippets and snippets of him. Mm-hmm. So
clippets is like a combination of snippets and clips. I like that.
Yep. Can he, Dal?
I think he can.
Yeah,
I think he can. I
don't think I've asked you where does Jared Brander play his best footy?
I think I see him, believe it or not, is that roaming halfback flanker.
Okay,
as your third tall.
Almost an interceptor.
He's got from memory and from the
what you know of him.
From the clippets that we've seen in his AFL career, BJ, I think he's got really good skills. I think he's neat enough to be that player across the half back line. He doesn't have to be that elite kick. He's not that penetrating, break the line style of play off the half back line, but I think he has a place there somewhere. I think he was picked 10 off the top of my head going back to that draft. So highly talented. And once again, we understand why he probably hasn't been given the amount of opportunities, because the Eagles have been good while his time has been there, including a premiership. So that's just the reality of a young guy coming in, lack of opportunity. But I haven't heard Jared Brander or anyone representing him saying he's desperate to come home.
Yeah, true.
He went to Geelong Grammar, through the Bendigo Pioneers. So, I mean, Victoria is home, but I haven't heard any homesick sort of comments. It's more, hey, he's from Victoria. Maybe we'll put him as part of this trade at some stage. But I don't hate the idea that he goes next door to Freo, if that was a possibility as well, Michael. So we appreciate your call. Let's go straight to Chris, who's in Carlton. You want to speak about Jeff Kennett?
Yeah, g'day, boys. 2008, Jeff Kennett did not want to trade Mark Williams and said that all the premiership players from that side were heroes of the club and were off the table. And it took until Dunstall and Clarkson said, look, it's not about our last premiership, it's about the next premiership. And what happened with Mark Williams? So he ends up going to Essendon. The Hawks win 3 more flags. So I think Jeff has definitely learned his lesson. I think it's on. There's definitely something going to happen, no doubt.
So, Chris, you believe, even though it was a little bit contradictory about what he put in an email and the way that he spoke this morning, you think that he knows something that those players are still not off the table as it currently stands?
Absolutely, yeah. And Jeff's always, he likes to play the game of, I knew something was happening. I didn't really know. Always likes to just sow that seed. So I think it's on for sure.
Are you a Hawks man? Are you a Hawks man, Chris?
Yeah. And Gunston would make sense.
How would you feel?
He sat out the last 12 months.
How would you feel as a Hawks supporter if they were... So you go back a handful of years ago and you're speaking about Jordan Lewis, Sam Mitchell, and Grant Birchall has done a similar thing, and Luke Hodge. It was a little bit different, but those 4 guys that have gone in the last 4 to 5 years, how would you feel as a Hawks supporter if they did it again with the likes of, whether it be Tom Mitchell, Gunston, Wingard, O'Meara, Bruce?
I think you can push one of them, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. You can't do wholesale, because wholesale doesn't work. You just throw yourself too far back. You've got to keep some core of it still there, I think. So it wouldn't surprise me, like I said, if Gunston was the one, because he missed basically 12 months last year. They've got a lot of young key forwards, particularly at Box Hill. But you need some senior guys around them to lead the way, so you don't tip them all. It's probably maybe Gunston, or I can't see Mitchell, and I can't see O'Meara, to be honest.
Can I ask you one more, Chris?
To come in the midfield.
From a Hawks perspective, and going back to what Jeff Kennett said off the back of 2008, do you think that any of those guys deserve to be treated differently? And I'm looking at probably more Gunston and Bruce because of the success and what they did going back probably, 6 to 8 years ago now with those 3 flags in a row?
No, they don't. No, I don't. But Bruce was still a 30 goal kicker this season.
Yep.
And you don't usually tip guys who have kicked 30 goals no matter what their age. Eddie Betts is a great example. But someone like Gunston, who basically didn't play, could probably afford to lose and not really feel that impact because you didn't have him for a year anyway.
Yeah. Appreciate the call, Chris. Some really good stuff there in regards
Chris has got a very balanced view.
I like it.
Which is very, respectfully, the supporters is very rare. It's either...
But what I like
either end of the
Chris has also got a little bit of ruthlessness about him. He's saying, no, if we have to move on, unfortunately, that is just their time. Let's move on to the next flag.
You made a good point because I was going to raise that because the era of Mitchell, Lewis, Hodge, Birchall kind of thing, that was a little bit different. I think they had to tread kind of more lightly because of their like club legends and 3-time premiership players, where this scenario is a little bit different. We're talking 3 of these, 4 of them. 4 out of the 5 were actually talking about being at other clubs prior to arriving to Hawthorn. 2 of them being premiership players. But
and Segler. That's the other one that's in as well. I haven't mentioned him.
So talking about O'Meara, Mitchell, and Wingard, those 3, they're not as tied into the fabric of the footy club as Hodge, Lewis, Mitchell, those kind of things. So it's a slightly different conversation. So that's where the supporters are probably less attached to those 3 players I just mentioned than when this happened with Mitchell, Lewis, and Hodge and Birchall. So there's a little bit more uproar back then.
I also want to pick this up because I think there's a little bit more to discuss off the back of that. We'll also be taking more calls on the Kogan mobile open line and more texts because there is plenty coming through and we appreciate all of it. This is Trade Mornings for Toyota. Certainty is a great feeling. Search Toyota Certified and Host Plus, the official superannuation partner of the AFL.